I found out my wife booked a romantic dinner for her lover, so I reserved the next table and brought his wife with me. My name is Clark. 41 years old, a lecturer in business administration at a university in Denver. My wife, Lucy, and I had been together for 17 years. To outsiders, we were the perfect couple. A cozy home in the suburbs, 2 stable jobs, annual vacations like clockwork. But that glossy surface had been cracking for a long time. I just didn't want to see it. That evening, Lucy was in the shower. The sound of water running echoed from the bathroom, a backdrop to something else. A small ping from her phone carelessly left on the nightstand. I'd never been the type to check my wife's phone. Trust was something I always protected. But intuition? That vague instinct you only believe when the pain cuts deep enough? Pulled me up from my seat. The screen lit up. The notification was chilling in its simplicity. Table for 2 confirmed at Lumiere Friday at 7:30 p.m. Windows seat is requested. He'll love it. I stood frozen. Lumiere was one of the most expensive restaurants in Denver. We had once dreamed of going there for our 10th anniversary but canceled because she had a work trip. I had never set foot in the place, yet now Lucy was planning a romantic evening there for someone else? I didn't plan to unlock the phone, but my hand moved before my mind could stop it. The passcode was still our wedding date. Just 4 digits. As simple as I once believed marriage to be, what I found was an entirely different world. Messages, photos, notes, even full conversations spanning almost a year with someone named Sam, a young blonde man who worked in the communications department at the law firm where Lucy was a partner. They chatted daily, hourly, about the most intimate little things from morning coffee to the shirt he wore at night. And photos. Photos from a 2-day work trip to Santa Fe. Sam curled up in Lucy's arms, her smile so bright I barely recognized the woman who once stood by me through the financial crisis in 2008. I still remember how it felt, like the air had vanished from the room, replaced by a piercing metallic ringing in my ears. I wanted to throw the phone across the room to scream. But I stood there, knuckles white, heart pounding wildly. "Have you seen my blue scarf?" Lucy called from the bathroom casually, like everything was fine, like she hadn't just torched our marriage with a dinner reservation. I placed the phone back exactly where it was, burying the eruption inside me. "Second drawer," I replied, my voice flat and cold. That night, I lay beside her, back turned to Lucy, listening to her steady breathing while my body stayed taut like a drawn bow. How many times had I told myself her distance was just work stress? How often had I pretended not to notice her, avoiding my eyes, making excuses to come home late, carrying unfamiliar cologne and suspiciously crisp blouses? Now I knew. Every suspicion, every gut feeling had been right. And I was no longer the blind husband. The next morning, I still kissed her goodbye like always. "Good luck with the Japanese clients this morning," I said, and Lucy nodded, completely unaware that I had already seen the candlelit dinner plan she made for Sam on Friday night. Once the door closed behind her, I picked up my phone and called HR at the university. I requested a 3-day leave. I needed time not to cry, but to prepare. I had spent 17 years being the perfect husband, but now I was going to be someone else. I sat at the kitchen table, staring into a cup of coffee gone cold, feeling hollow. In less than 12 hours the world I had trusted had been stripped bare. But instead of collapsing, something else began to take shape inside me. Sharp, calm, and terrifyingly clear. I didn't want a screaming match. I didn't want to be the man who smashes plates and yells in the kitchen only to be met with pity and another robotic "I'm sorry." No. If Lucy wanted a special night with Sam, she'd have one. Just not the way she imagined. I redoubled Lucy's email. Her calendar was meticulous, as if she never expected anyone to find it. 7:30 p.m. Friday, reservation at Lumiere, note clearly saying window seat, soft lighting, wine pre-arranged. A perfect evening for 2 people, with nothing to hide except their spouses. I searched Sam's name through her firm's employee directory. Sam Walker, Internal Communications. It took less than 5 minutes to find his social media. Then just one more click. Emma Walker, Sam's wife, an executive architect at a major design firm in downtown Denver. She had a warm smile and kind eyes. I didn't know Emma, but I knew what betrayal felt like, and I thought maybe she should know too. Of course, I couldn't just call a stranger and say, "Your husband is sneaking around with my wife." I needed a different approach. Subtle, believable, and effective. As a university lecturer, I had one special privilege: inviting guest speakers for our seminars. So I crafted the perfect email, formal, concise, and completely professional. "Dear Ms. Emma Walker, my name is Clark Whitmore and I currently teach project management at Metro Denver University. We are hosting a speaker series on sustainable urban design and came across your recent work in the Rivergate Business District. If you're interested, I'd love to discuss the possibility of inviting you as a guest speaker. I've scheduled a dinner for this Friday at Lumiere 7:30 p.m. to talk through the details. It would be an honor to meet you there." I hit send. Less than 2 hours later Emma replied, "Thank you, Mr. Whitmore. I'm very interested in this opportunity. Friday at 7:30 at Lumiere works perfectly. I look forward to meeting you." I read that line over and over, heart pounding with a strange mix of nerves and sorrow. She didn't know yet, but she would, not through anger, but through the clarity of truth. The hardest part was next. Booking the table, I called Lumiere directly. "Good evening," the hostess answered. "We have a few tables left for Friday. Do you have a preference?" "A table for two near the window if possible," I said calmly, "and if there's one available near the reservation under Hamilton and Rothman, ideally next to theirs. We're potential partners and would like to be nearby." A half-truth. And it worked. "Certainly, sir, I'll seat you near them. Any special requests for wine or the menu?" "Just a good view," I replied with a small smile, though she couldn't see it. Friday night. Emma and I would be seated just steps from Lucy and Sam, close enough to see every expression, every movement, close enough to shatter the illusion they'd built in the dark. I hung up the phone and sat still for a long moment. Everything was ready. No screaming? No accusations? Just a quiet, devastating reveal. Perfectly timed. Lucy always thought I was soft. She was wrong. And Friday night would prove it. I arrived at Lumiere 20 minutes early in a teal silk shirt Lucy once said was too loud for dinner, my hair neatly styled, cologne subtle, and polished dress shoes I'd never worn outside the box until now. I didn't dress to impress anyone, I dressed for battle. And tonight's battlefield was a 5-star restaurant lit by candlelight, the soft strains of a violin and glimmering crystal glasses. The waiter led me to the reserved table, a perfect spot. From here I could see the window table, the one where Lucy and Sam would sit. They hadn't arrived yet. I sat down and ordered a martini, my chest tightening. No matter how much I had prepared, the moment of confrontation still made it hard to breathe. Not from fear, but from finally facing a truth I had avoided for over a year. "Clark Whitmore?" A deep warm voice called behind me. I turned around. Emma Walker stood there. Tall, dressed in a dark dress with a polite smile. She looked exactly like her photos online, though her eyes were a bit more tired, maybe from work or maybe from what she didn't yet know was about to unfold. "I'm really glad you came," I said, standing to shake her hand. "Thank you for accepting on such short notice." "The pleasure's mine. The topic you brought up really intrigued me," she replied, and took the seat across from me. We started with small talk about urban planning, education and the role of sustainable architecture. I listened, nodded, asked questions. But my eyes kept drifting toward the entrance. Then they arrived. Lucy wore the gray blazer I gave her for her birthday last year. Sam had on a tight-fitting suit, walking confidently as if the world revolved around him. When Lucy pulled out his chair, they laughed together like they were starring in their own romantic film. Far removed from the real world. I tightened my grip on the glass and kept my tone steady as I continued speaking with Emma. She was too kind to notice I was holding back a storm. I watched Lucy lean in, pour wine, her hand grazing Sam's wrist. He smiled and tilted his head, the candlelight catching on his sparkling cufflinks. As I turned to grab my napkin, my eyes met Lucy's. She froze, her wine glass nearly slipped if not for the waiter catching it in time. Sam followed her gaze and saw me. Before they could react, I turned back to Emma. "Excuse me for a moment," I said softly. "I need to use the restroom." On my way I planned each step. I didn't want a dramatic punch like in some TV drama. I wanted the truth. Bare, cold and undeniable. Just as I stepped out from the restroom area, I ran into Sam. He froze, eyes wide. "You're Clark, right?" His voice was barely above a whisper. I nodded. "And you're the one holding hands with my wife under the table while your wife is sitting less than 10 steps away." His face went pale, lips trembling. "Please, not here." "Why not?" I tilted my head, keeping my tone calm. "Isn't this the perfect place? Candlelight, wine, soft music, everything set for a perfect performance." I don't want excuses, but Emma deserves to know, doesn't she? I glanced toward my table where Emma was looking around with concern. "She deserves to know who her husband is really having dinner with." Sam turned as if to run, but Lucy was already behind him, her face white. "Clark, what are you doing here?" I looked at her, then called out, "Emma, could you come here for a second?" Emma approached, eyes focused. "What's going on?" I looked her in the eye. "Emma, this is my wife, Lucy, and I believe you recognize Sam." "Your husband?" The entire restaurant seemed to freeze in that breathless moment. Sam covered his mouth as tears welled up. Lucy stepped back. Emma turned to her husband, hurt written all over her face. I turned and walked away, leaving them in the chaos, but before I left, I added calmly, "Oh. And don't worry. Dinner's still on Lucy. Her company card seems quite familiar to him." I walked out, head high, leaving behind full glasses, unsaid apologies and two unfaithful people drowning in the truth they couldn't escape. When I returned to my table after that brief confrontation, Emma was still standing, staring at Sam, trembling in Lucy's arms. They both looked pale, like they had been yanked out of a beautiful dream and thrown into brutal reality. I signaled the waiter. "Please," I said gently but firmly, "I need a private room. And if possible, merge our table with that of Ms. Lucy Hamilton. It seems we have a few things to clarify." The waiter paused for a moment, then nodded. "I'll arrange it immediately, sir." Within 5 minutes we were ushered into a discreet private room. Soft lighting, the table set for 4. I sat down first, Emma beside me. Lucy and Sam sat across stiff like students caught cheating on their final exam. No one spoke, no sound of chairs scraping, no clinking silverware, just distant music and heavy breathing mixed into the air. Lucy broke the silence. "Clark? I don't even know where to start." "Start 3 days ago," I said, pouring water into my glass. "When you got the reservation confirmation and I happened to see it on your screen, that's when I knew." Both of them froze. Sam looked down, and Lucy opened her mouth to speak, but I raised my hand. "I don't need a monologue. I read every message, Lucy, every word, every photo, every secret trip to Santa Fe. Don't try to imagine what it was like reading that." "I remember exactly how it felt," Sam whispered. I'm sorry." I turned to Emma. "She's my wife, and he's your husband. The least we deserve is the truth, said to our faces." Emma sat still, eyes locked on Sam. "What are you going to tell me? That it was a mistake? Or that you were just finding yourself? Because clearly, you've found quite a lot in the arms of another man's wife." Sam wept. I never meant for it to go this far. It started as a joke. I felt lost, unappreciated at home. "Lucy," she listened to me. "I listened too," Emma said, voice shaking. "I spent entire weekends reworking your office layout. You said you wanted a space that inspired creativity. I believe that." Lucy turned to me, voice trembling. "Clark? I know I messed up. I destroyed the most valuable thing in my life. But please don't let this be the end." I smiled, not gently. It was the smile of someone who had weathered a storm and had nothing left to lose. "Lucy, the end didn't start tonight. It began the moment you looked at Sam the way you used to look at me. That's when you decided that wedding vows were just words, not a commitment." She lowered her head. Sam turned away, tears falling freely. I pulled a hotel key from my pocket and placed it on the table. "I'll be staying at the hotel across the street tonight. I already booked it. Nothing surprising." "Lucy, you're welcome to go home, if you still have the nerve. I'll return Monday morning. It'd be best if you weren't there by then." Lucy panicked. "Clark, please don't do this. I'll do anything to fix it." "You can't fix a house that's rotten at the foundation," I replied. I used to be the kind of man who always forgave. But now, I've learned that sometimes, forgiveness is just betrayal of yourself. I stood, adjusted my shirt, then turned to Emma. "I'm truly sorry you had to find out this way." She nodded silently. "Thank you for showing me the truth. It hurts, but I needed it." I looked at the other two one last time. "I wish you both luck, not because I forgive you, but because everyone pays for their choices. Sooner or later." I walked out of Lumiere without looking back. The sound of my shoes echoed sharply on the stone path, cutting through the still night air of the upscale district. In my hand was a small wallet, holding the key to room 1203 at the Celeste Hotel, a suite overlooking downtown, where the lights never go out, even when the heart already has. When the front desk greeted me with a professional smile and handed me the key card, I nodded silently. Inside the room I locked the door, slipped off my shoes and walked to the large window. The amber lights of the city reflected against the glass, casting my silhouette onto the wooden floor. For the first time in years I saw myself clearly. Without Lucy beside me, without any shadow hiding the loneliness that had long slept inside me, I sat on the edge of the bed. Then I cried. Not the movie kind of sobbing, and not silent tears either. It was a surge of anger mixed with pain. Raw, harsh, uncontrollable. I cried for 17 years of youth, for nights waiting by the door, for lies wrapped in flowers and wine, for all the times I thought I was loved when in truth I was just being slowly replaced by something younger, newer, more temporary. I don't know how long I sat there. I only know that when the knock came I was still hugging a pillow, eyes burning. I walked over and peered through the peephole. It was Emma. I opened the door slightly. She wore a long coat, hair slightly tousled, exhaustion etched across her face. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, voice hoarse. I didn't know where else to go. I opened the door wider. "Come in." We sat in 2 armchairs by the window. Outside, cars kept passing by. As if the world hadn't cracked wide open tonight. Emma was silent for a moment, then sighed. "I still don't understand how you knew everything and managed to sit through dinner like that." I gave a soft laugh. I didn't sit still. I waited for the right moment. Some truths? If you let someone else say them, they lose their weight. She nodded. "Thank you for not letting me keep living in a lie." We talked like 2 strangers who shared the same wound. She told me Sam was the first person who believed in her wild designs, and she had thought, if anyone got her it was him. I told her Lucy was the one who slipped the wedding ring on my finger in the rain, promising never to lose her way. We were both wrong. "I think I'm going to file for divorce," I said, my voice hollow. Emma looked at me, unsurprised. "I don't think I can live with someone who can pretend that well either." I looked her in the eye. "I'm not angry at Lucy anymore. At least not the way I used to be. Anger doesn't last forever. But there's one thing I know for sure. I will never let myself stay in a relationship that chips away at my self-respect day by day." She was silent, then quietly said, "You're stronger than I thought." "No," I replied. "I'm just the last one willing to look at the truth." That night, Emma stayed in a separate room in the same hotel. Before she left, she looked at me and said, "If you need a friend to get through this, I'm here." I nodded. "Thank you, Emma. Tonight I think you understood me better than my wife did in over a decade." After she left, I stood watching her figure disappear down the long hallway. In that moment, I didn't feel strong. But I felt lighter. As if, for the first time in years, I had set down a suitcase full of stones I'd been dragging for far too long. Lucy could beg, could promise, could write hundreds of apology emails, but my heart had closed to her the moment I saw the way she looked at Sam. The way she used to look at me, and I didn't need anyone's permission to move on. I would walk forward on my own, with the same feet that had carried me through every storm. The next morning, I left the Celeste Hotel while the city was still wrapped in fog. I returned to the house where Lucy and I had lived for 17 years. Not to hold on, but to clear out what remained of a marriage that had silently ended long ago. Lucy was already waiting in the living room. She sat on the couch, hair messy, eyes red, blouse wrinkled and half-buttoned. As soon as I walked in, she jumped up. "Clark. We need to talk," she said, her voice cracked like she'd rehearsed it for hours. I set my wallet on the table, calm. "Then talk. I know I messed up. I know I betrayed you and there's no excuse for it, but we can get through this. I'll do anything. Counseling? I'll cut off all contact with Sam. I already told him. He left the city." I cut her off. Lucy froze. "What?" "I heard from one of his coworkers. Sam quit his job and moved back to Santa Barbara this morning. Apparently, he couldn't handle the office finding out." She sank into the couch, hands in her hair. "You told everyone?" "Not out of revenge. But because I refused to live in the dark. I called your mother, Mark and Jenna, even your college friends. The ones you always tried to impress. I told them exactly what happened. That you cheated on me for nearly a year, hiding it behind fake meetings, disguised work emails, and kisses shared with another man while I was cooking dinner waiting for you to come home." Lucy shook her head, panic rising in her eyes. "You've destroyed my reputation. Do you know what the company will think? What my friends will say?" I laughed bitterly. "You care more about your reputation than your marriage? Then let me remind you, you destroyed it, not me. I just stopped protecting the mask you built." She stepped closer, trying to take my hand. "Clark, please. Don't do this. I love you. I really do." I stepped back. "Lucy, love can't survive in the shadows of lies. If you loved me, you wouldn't have called someone else baby while still holding me in your arms at night." She collapsed to the floor, shoulders shaking. "He meant nothing. It was a mistake." "No, Lucy. It was a series of deliberate choices. You had the chance to stop. Every time you texted him, made a reservation, walked out with a lie on your lips, but you didn't. And now I won't either." Her voice cracked. "If you leave, you'll ruin my life." "No," I said, eyes locked on hers. "I'll save mine." The following week was filled with Lucy trying everything to win me back. Calls, texts, flowers at work, even a 4-page email detailing her journey to clarity after that dinner. I didn't reply. I'd heard enough apologies in my life, and now I wanted silence to say everything. I hired a lawyer and filed for divorce. 3 weeks later, a close friend happened to see Lucy and Sam at a cafe in the suburbs. They didn't look radiant anymore. 2 days later, I received her last message. I tried to move on with him. But there's nothing left. He doesn't smile at me anymore. And I don't see you in his eyes. I didn't respond. A few days after that, I saw she had deactivated her social media accounts and temporarily stepped down from the board at work for personal reasons. A woman who had once lived for appearances was now facing herself with nowhere to hide. Spring came earlier than usual that year. I noticed it one Saturday morning when sunlight poured through the windows of my new apartment, casting warm streaks across the dark wooden floor. I was making coffee when my phone rang. It was Emma. "Coffee at Tanner's?" she asked simply. I glanced at the clock. 9:12, I am in. "Give me 15 minutes, I replied, smiling. Since that night at Lumiere, Emma and I, once strangers, now survivors of the same shipwreck, had stayed in touch. First daily check-in texts, then regular weekend meetups. No pressure, no expectations, just two people who had lost everything, slowly learning how to navigate the world again. That morning, she was waiting at our usual table, notebook open, 2 lattes already ordered. I guessed right, didn't I? She smiled, sliding one toward me. "I'm starting to think you're the only one who remembers what I like," I said, taking a sip. "Lucy got my coffee order wrong for 17 years. We both laughed. Not the painful kind from before, but something lighter, calmer. "How have you been?" I asked. "Officially finalized the divorce last week," Emma said, nodding as if to confirm it for herself. "Sam didn't say much, just left a short note. I'm sorry for making you lose faith in love." I looked at her. "And did you?" She thought for a moment, then met my eyes. "No. Because I'm learning to believe again from scratch. But this time, not in promises. In small, consistent actions." Her answer left me quiet. We didn't need to say more. In that silence, I knew we were walking the same path, even if we hadn't named what was growing between us. The next months passed in rare peace. I returned to teaching, enrolled in a weekend photography class, and for the first time, lived without the label of being someone's husband. Emma, besides running her firm, began speaking at my student seminars. She never missed one, and each time she stood at the front sharing her passion for design and humanity, I felt inspired all over again. One day, after a session, I invited her to my new place. Small, but filled with greenery and light. We had pizza on the balcony, watching the city shimmer. "Do you think we're changing?" I asked, pulling a knit blanket over my lap. "No," she said, turning to me. "I think we're returning to who we really are." I stayed quiet. Her answer warmed my heart in a way I hadn't expected. One early summer evening, walking along the river after an outdoor concert, Emma suddenly stopped and looked at me seriously. "Clark, I'm not in a rush. I don't want to push you into anything you're not ready for, but if one day, you want to try again, not with another marriage, but just a relationship built on trust, honesty, and no secrets, I'm ready." I looked at her. Her eyes held no pressure, only patience and sincerity. I smiled. "I'm not ready to love again, the old way. But if it's the way you described, starting from friendship, sharing, no hiding, then maybe I've already started without even realizing." Emma said nothing. She just took my hand gently without urgency. That hand didn't promise anything grand, but it told me if anyone was going to help write my next chapter, it was the woman standing before me. And under the soft lights, with a breeze brushing over the water, I knew I was stepping into something quiet, imperfect, but real. And this time, I wouldn't have to sacrifice my self-worth to keep love, because the person beside me had once shattered too, and now we were both rebuilding from those very pieces. A year after that fateful night at Lumiere, I received an invitation to Professor Martin Benson's retirement celebration. My PhD advisor and someone I deeply respected. The event was held at Hotel Limery, elegant and calm, just like him. I arrived early, in a simple yet elegant navy shirt, wearing my father's cufflinks. In my hand was a small gift-wrapped package, a rare book he'd often mentioned. I expected nothing more than a quiet evening of conversation, laughter, and old mentors. But the moment I stepped into the ballroom, I saw a familiar figure. Lucy. She stood near the wine table, thinner, with highlights in her hair, still polished but without the arrogant confidence she once wore so easily. When she turned and saw me, we both seemed to pause for a beat. Lucy walked over, wine glass in hand. "Clark?" She said, her voice rougher than I remembered. "I didn't think you'd come." "I didn't think I'd see you here either," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. She gave a faint smile. "Professor Benson is the last one still in touch with me. After everything?" I nodded. "He's someone who always sees the best in people." Lucy looked at me for a long moment, as if searching for the right words. Finally, she sighed, eyes lowering. "I owe you an apology. A real one. Not because you need to hear it, but because I need to say it." I stayed silent. "After everything blew up, I lost more than I expected," she continued. "Not just reputation or business relationships, but my own self-respect. I tried to hold on to Sam for a while, but it fell apart faster than what I destroyed with you." I looked at her. No anger, no resentment. Just the feeling of speaking to someone who had long stepped out of my life. "I hope you find peace," I said softly. She nodded slowly. "And you? Are you okay?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "I'm rebuilding life on my own terms, and I'm not alone." Just then, Emma walked into the room. She wore a charcoal dress and understated jewelry. When she saw me, she smiled. The one I jokingly called the light at the end of the tunnel. Lucy followed my gaze and nodded when she understood. "She's a good woman," Lucy said. "You deserve a fresh start." I placed my hand over my heart, once shattered, now whole. "Thank you," I said sincerely, "and so do you. Just start again, only when you're ready not to hurt anyone else." Lucy stepped back, as if giving me space to move forward. That night Emma and I sat side by side at the celebration. We chatted with friends, took photos, and shared a slow dance under golden lights. No grand declarations, no scripted future. Just the quiet, honest presence of two people who had once fallen apart and were now rebuilding, not from scratch, but from cracks healed with time and trust. As we left the party, I held Emma's hand and looked up at the starry sky. "You know," I said softly, "there was a time I thought betrayal was the end." Emma gently squeezed my hand. "And now? I think it was just a break, a pause so I could turn toward a better path." And we walked on, without looking back. Because the past had been closed with forgiveness, the present was painted with trust, and the future was quietly unfolding, in every gentle hand I held that night. 1 year after the storm, I was no longer the man who gave up everything for a wife who betrayed him. Now I am Clark, strong, steady, and free. I didn't just survive the pain, I found a new beginning built on honesty and respect. Betrayal once broke me, but it also led me to a better life. I learned to place my self-worth above blind love, and in the end, I chose myself with no regrets. What do you think of Clark's choice? Was he too strong, or was it exactly what a man needs to do to protect his dignity? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful family stories.